Did I miss something here?
What did I do? I got sworn in. But what she was asking me was I sworn in? Apparently there was some question, and everybody was being asked if they'd been sworn in. A little late to be asking.
But you're pushing, didn't you?
How you been?
Good.
Having fun yet?
Treasure.
You mean down at the lower holes? Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm talking about on the other side, over on your side of the road.
I had a question for you.
Yeah.
So this says all projects in zoning districts except short for residential?
Where's that?
And then this says all districts. Unless I misinterpreted it. Oh, okay. And that's the definition in the first one. Okay.
Yeah, right.
Thank you.
But that's the one
Yeah.
I, yeah.
Scullery maid.
That's served you, right?
Get rid of everybody.
Have a microphone.
I always used to type the microphone.
Okay, I'm going to call to order the Planning Board meeting for May 17th, 2022. First item on the agenda is to introduce the Planning Board members. My name is Kathy Barnard. I'm the chairman, and I'll start over at my extreme left. Doug Braskin. Next to Doug is Von Dugan. then Peter Goodwin. Mike Hodder is the vice chairman of the planning board. And to my right, John Thurston, then Brad Harriman, who is the selectman's representative to the planning board, and Julie Jacobs, who is a planning board alternate. This is basically a work session. We don't have any public hearing scheduled for tonight. So why don't we just jump right into it? And so the first item on the agenda is the short-term rental committee update.
Everyone's looking at me. I've scheduled the short-term rental committee for May 23rd at 8 a.m. Agenda will be going out very shortly and being posted for that meeting, and that's the only update at this time.
Okay, great. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the charrette. We all agreed that any comments we had, we would forward to Tavis, and then send the, which people did, I assume, because then Tavis forwarded a list of some of the items, or of all of the items, to the planning board. So I'm assuming that everybody's had a chance to look at this.
Yeah, all I did was break down those comments I received into what appeared to be do's and don'ts. If you want it broken out differently or want to change or modify those, let me know. Otherwise, I'll just send it off to Maggie and Heritage and be done.
Okay. Any comments from anyone? The only thought that I had was that some of the references probably could be changed, but the first item on develop a plan for the two municipal buildings on Laner Street, that's an and rather than A-N-N-A-N. Then the last one on the do's list, one good idea that I heard was to move the old playground, and then they go on to say one of the reasons that I did not use the playground was snowy, or windy, and we might take out the rest of that sentence, or the rest of that until the comma. Then down to the don'ts, sort of similar ideas. The third one, Wayfinding Sign. I'm on the sign committee. I mean, I guess several of us were. Fossfield, the ones about the cops chasing drug dealing people. I'm not sure that's going to be of benefit to anyone. On the last page, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, the dentist parking lot. I mean, the point is there. The town already told him he could not hook up when he was forced to move, and then why don't we just leave it at that? And down to the third one from the bottom about the Dumont houses, we probably could take that out, that last sentence. So, anybody else have any thoughts? Okay, then is it okay if we send this on to Maggie, who's the head of the committee?
So are we, so this last one here, the last, can we take that last three letters off of that before we send that?
Oh, yeah, okay. Yep, right. Okay. All right, I don't know, do you think we need a motion, or? This would be a sense of the board, and it goes to the Heritage Commission.
Okay.
Or to Maggie Steer, actually. Okay. The next item on the agenda is the ADU discussion, an update. So Tavis, you've given us some other changes that you've made to the
yes,
proposed ordinance.
Specifically with this one, I moved paragraph C, the definition, I moved that back into the definitions. Following some comments at the last meeting, I tried under E, I created type of structure and then separated out new construction from conversion because it seemed that there were some reader difficulties with that. Made the other adjustments that were discussed at the meeting. Then down at F7, it's on the third page, put in that neither single-family home nor the ADU shall be used for short-term rental. I left short-term rental underlined because one of the things I'll talk about later is the future definition changes, and I believe the short-term rental committee that we talked about last meeting and earlier today will be coming up with that definition. So, other than that, it's effectively the same as you saw at the last meeting.
Okay, so the state statute that you're talking about that we're referencing is the accessory apartment dwelling, that regulation, 674:71-73.
Correct.
And then the other one is the conditional, the authority for issuing a conditional permit.
Correct.
Okay, and that's 674:21. Comments, questions?
Perhaps it's irrelevant, but I ended up staying
Can you
in,
speak into your mic, please? Thanks.
perhaps it's irrelevant, but I stayed in a VRBO in California. And this, to me, was the perfect VRBO because it was a two-car garage plus some extra space, which had been turned into a rental. And so therefore, this was a case where the property added space which could house people and therefore was not taking away space from other places. And so to me, this woman, she needed some extra money. This is what she did, and to me it was a very perfect way to do short-term rental because it was not a space which was available before that.
Okay, but we're not talking about short-term rentals for the accessory apartment.
Couple of simple edits. Second line in paragraph A, change planning board to board.
For some reason, it doesn't stick.
Well, spell checks are funny. In paragraph E, let's see now, 1, 2, 3, fourth line down at the end, I would suggest that read as follows: further authorized to grant waivers as opposed to grant a waiver. It gives us more flexibility. And then I have two substantive comments to make. The first, in ADUs permitted by conditional use permit, this would be for detached. We had discussed restricting them out of the shorefront residential district, and I don't see that anywhere listed as a proviso in this
Mike, where are
discussion
you?
document.
Where are you?
Anywhere in the
Oh.
ADU discussion. We had discussed, we had some discussion about keeping detached ADUs out of the shorefront residential district. No decision had been made last meeting whether we were going to do that or not, but I don't see any opening here for that discussion. I'll point out that looking over the ADU regulations in our neighboring and competitive vacation towns, Meredith, Laconia, Tuftonboro, and Alton all allow ADUs in the SFR. So if we do not, then we would be anomalous around the lake. But on the other hand, there may be feeling to keep them out of the SFR anyway. So we should have that discussion.
Well, there was discussion at the last meeting about understanding that SFR has to allow for an ADU. If the board wants a provision for no detached,
That's the point.
I didn't hear that as a board, I heard that as a comment. So if the board wants it, it can be worked in there.
Yeah, the board just has to decide whether you want,
Yeah,
whether
right,
we want to have
yes.
them in SFR or not.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know that it was decided. I thought we were going to discuss it with the public. You know, this is going to a forum, I presume. It should be a topic.
Well, not to be argumentative, but only a little bit, wouldn't it be easier if we presented the public with the best document that we can come up with? And if they find flaws in it, alter it accordingly, rather than ask them to write it for us?
So if someone has an existing single-family home and an existing bunkhouse, if you prohibited a detached ADU, the bunkhouse would remain a bunkhouse. It would have no impact on the impervious structure or impervious coverage of the lot or the percentage of lot that was covered. It would still be a bunkhouse, it just wouldn't have an accessory dwelling unit potential.
Which would be salutary. But on the other hand, if there were no ADU or bunkhouse to begin with, and we did permit it, we'd then have an increase in impervious and an increase in activity in the shorefront.
You could. You could also put in extra house, extra parking area, extra impervious surface.
Agreed.
I
So
mean,
this is
you
something,
can have up to 30% lot coverage within the 250 regardless of how you parse that out, with or without an ADU.
it's something for the board to wrestle with. Personally, I have no personal feeling one way or the other.
I'm happy to write something in if the board would like.
Okay, well, I sort of had the impression that we were going to keep the ones that required a conditional use permit out of the shorefront, because the state statute is pretty clear that if it's attached, then you don't have any choice. But if you go take the next step of having it detached, then you would have a choice as to where it would be located.
Sure, and that's what we're deciding.
Yeah, right. And
So
so I'm just
I
saying I
can
am
put
in
something-
favor of that, is what I was
Happy
trying
to
to
put
say.
something into paragraph E that would address that if the board desires.
Well, I mean, I'm just one person, Tavis, so I guess I'd like to sort of hear Vaughn feels it's okay. How do the rest of you feel?
I think we should have something in there, as I said, because I think presenting it to a forum, there should be some language for the people to be able to, take a stab at if they like it or don't like it, to get us our feedback. If we don't have anything there, it might not, then we'd probably mention it, but most people wouldn't even think about it, really, so I agree. I think we should have a statement one way or the other in there, whether to, limit it, not allow it in the shorefront residential, and see how it's perceived at the forum, and then we can adjust it accordingly, either take it out or allow it or whatever, but I think we do need something in there for that.
Okay, thanks.
I think we had,
Wait a minute,
Sorry?
John was going to,
As far as the forum and the process here, I'm kind of hoping that we look at it like we did the restaurants and carryout, where we actually poll the public and see if they actually want the ADUs to remain the same as the definition states it, and to not allow it, but to get comment where the public wants to, and then to retool is another avenue. So I think there's a few different steps here that we should take when we present it to the forum. We should say either we want them or not, and then if we want them, then how do we want them?
right,
last meeting, we did hear testimony from the Wolfeboro Waters Association that they were opposed to ADUs in the shorefront residential.
right.
So perhaps we should exclude them in our draft document and then let the public
Yeah,
worry it during the public forum they'll see a statement, not an SFR, and if there is a groundswell, oh my God, we have to have them, and we put them back in. And if we don't, then we know by tacit agreement that they don't want them in the SFR.
Okay, so those will only be for the detached,
Only for-
I mean, for the attached.
Attached is in by right.
Right, yeah.
Detached is what we're arguing
Yeah,
about.
right.
We should put in detached prohibition in the
So my
SFR.
suggestion would be to say E, ADUs permitted by conditional use permit, period, in all zoning districts excluding the shorefront residential, and pursuant to RSA 674-21, the paragraph remains.
Yeah, that, or however you come up with it,
Yep.
that would be fine. Just, I would ask you to go through A, B, and C in particular, because you'll have to rewrite C.
Why?
Doesn't C say it's permissible on any lot on which a single-family home can be permitted?
C is state law.
Yeah, I understand, but you have to put in there, except in the shorefront residential district, except a detached in the shorefront residential.
Well,
Otherwise, you're leaving yourself open, aren't you?
I don't think so, because one ADU is permissible on any lot in which a single-family home can be permitted. That's true.
Yeah.
So ADUs permitted by right are those that are attached via conditioned space, blah, 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 blah. ADUs by conditional use permit in all zoning districts excluding single-family or shorefront residential.
In the interests of safety, I would qualify C in some fashion, like C below E or something to that effect.
So
Yeah, right.
one ADU is permissible on any lot upon which a single-family home can be permitted in accordance with D and E below,
Something like that, just to be safe.
or as follows.
And then if I can move on to the other concern I have, in section F, number 7, neither single-family detached can be used as a short-term rental. I would suggest that rather than refer to the definition of a short-term rental, which is what we're doing now, that we simply say something like, and I've stolen this from Meredith, neither the single-family home nor the ADU shall be rented for periods longer than 30 days and longer than 30 days, and neither shall be rented for more than 120 cumulative rental days per year. So you're allowing them to do 30-day rentals, but they can't have any more than 120 in a year.
The whole point of the ADU is to allow, mother or daughter, let's say, to live in a separate dwelling on the same property. So limiting to 120 days doesn't make sense. Having it a minimum of 30 days does, but saying 120 days, mom's got to go somewhere else,
This was council's recommendation, and then the definition of short-term rental would specify 30 days, not to exceed 30 days unless it was a long-term or,
This is what council recommended?
anticipating a much different short-term rental definition than 30 days, but never more than 120 days a year, because, well, Vaughn suggested it's for additional family members or extended family. The state is viewing it as a completely separate family.
Yeah, exactly.
As a living unit, not as a rental, as a short-term rental unit.
Except that I think we have to look at the reality of the situation and realize that these are going to be looked at as potential short-term rentals.
Right.
And this would obviate that use.
But Mike, you just chopped off everybody that has a full year lease.
Pardon?
You just chopped off everybody that has a full year lease when you said only 30 days.
Yes.
Or only 120 days.
Because I think the practical use of a detached ADU is not going to be for mom and pop to stay there in their old age, and it's not going to be rented to the fellow down the street who needs a place to stay because he works here in town. I think these are going to be looked at as property rentals for income.
I think it could be a couple of, high school kids that are just starting out. Could be for a year and a half, 2 years. That's my feeling.
But we don't really know that, so
Well,
we're trying to make some
That was the premise of
provisions.
ADUs,
Yeah.
was to look at housing opportunities.
Yeah, it was my understanding that at the beginning of all this discussion, it was to increase housing availability in the town, meaning perhaps year-long leases for people that couldn't find somewhere else to live. So if you're limiting them to 120 days, then you're not fulfilling that need.
Then how are we going to protect against detached ADUs being turned into short-term rentals if
You
we
don't
don't
allow
have
them to
some kind
be
of
short-term.
limitation?
You define short-term rentals to preclude less than 30 days.
Yeah, right.
Only preclude less than 30, but don't limit the length that people can stay. I mean, another family may want to live there for 2 years.
Right.
That's okay.
Functionally speaking, if
Well, then-
if June,
sorry.
July, and August are your rental months, there's your 120 days for someone that wants to do,
Yeah, exactly.
Month
And-
to
and
month.
that's what this wording is aimed for, to allow that kind of usage. And that's what our neighboring towns seem to anticipate that these detached ADUs are going to be used for, summertime rentals near or on the lakeshore. And what I thought we were looking for was to limit that use.
you did. You effectively just limited it from the lakeshore entirely.
From the location, but then again, across the street from Lakeshore,
Yes, but if it's already taken up by a year lease by some high school kid, that got out in June, that ties it up for a whole year. That would take care of that. Or say.
I'm happy to reach out to Meredith and find out if they've had any luck with that. If it's just something they put in and have wondered how to enforce.
you'll find it's the case also in Laconia and possibly Alton, not Tuftonboro. It would be useful to know. The danger is, the only thing I'm concerned about is if we refer in number 7 to the definition of short-term rental, we're tying it to the activity of the short-term rental subcommittee, and that definition that they come up with has got to be put to the voters also, along with this. So we have two essays out to the voters, whereas if we build it into our draft ADU regulation, we have one reach out to the voters.
Okay, well, first of all, the short-term rental committee will send their recommendations back to the planning
Well, yeah, of
board.
course.
So, I'm not as concerned about that, but I really am concerned about the fact that these could be used as short-term rentals. And so I'd like to see us put a 30-day limit on it.
Oh, I think we're not arguing that. I think we were arguing limiting it to
Yeah.
keeping people
Well-
out after 120 days.
Okay, that's fine, if we just say 30 days, maximum of 30 days.
A minimum of 30 days.
Minimum of 30 days.
Yeah, minimum, right.
In other words, rented for periods no longer than 30 days or
Shorter
than 30 days.
Shorter than 30 days.
Rented for periods shorter than 30 days, and then delete the 120-day cumulative?
No.
Yes, yes.
What's the reason for 120-day cumulative?
Because then it restricts the usage of the ADU, as Tavis said, to the high season.
Why would you want to do that?
But if you're looking at creating housing opportunities, why do you want to allow housing only in the,
Because I don't think these ADUs are actually going to wind up being housing opportunities for people who can't find housing in the town, because they're going to be at market rate, and they're going to be in desirable neighbor areas. I don't think you're going to find local realtors building ADUs madly to allow for starting out high school kids finding a place to work, live while they work for good Hugh Hawkins.
but similar to the motels, what I envision happening is that someone will rent it month to month throughout the summer, and then it may allow someone to live here throughout the winter.
If the rates are attractive.
Well, the winter rates are never going to be the summer rates.
No, they
Yeah.
never will be, but there's, even in the wintertime, housing here is hard to find, if you can find it at all. So
So it might be some combination of no less than 30 days at a time, where month to month is used no greater than 120 days cumulative per year. But a long lease, an annual lease would also be permissible, or a biannual lease, whatever.
Mike, I guess I'm just confused that if you suspect that there is a hard time finding housing in the winter, why would you want to intentionally then restrict the available housing by limiting it to 120 days?
Because practically speaking, Doug, I don't think these ADUs are going to be hitting into the housing market for people who are just starting out. I don't think that's been the experience of detached ADUs around the state, certainly not around the lake here. They don't get into that market. And I think that's what I'm concerned about, is if we do allow detached ADUs, we do have the potential for genie out of the bottle, because we don't really know what's likely to happen with detached ADUs. We know attached ADUs have not offered a housing opportunity in the town here at all, because we've had so few applications. So now we're trying detached. It seems logical to think that a detached ADU is going to offer privacy, convenience, not attached to the family that owns the primary residence, therefore potentially a new housing opportunity. Yet the realities of the market suggest that they're going to not be inexpensive.
Yes, I would agree that with all those things that you mentioned, they'll be more desirable and therefore command a higher price. But I think it's also possible that if that's the case, then people who are currently in less expensive or less desirable housing might move up to those more desirable ones and free up the less expensive ones for somebody else to move in.
Well, in a wonderful world where we had almost inexhaustibly deep pockets, that would probably work. But I think the people who are in those sorts of housing right now, and I can't say this for sure, are not likely to be able to step up to a detached ADU. But even if they could, the important thing is that the danger for a detached ADUs, as some members of this board seem to feel, is that they're going to turn into short-term rentals. And we needed to...
7 is worded well, then. By not allowing
It's
it to
only
be-
worded well if you come up with a worded well short-term rental definition, and we don't have one.
And I thought that the 30
That's why we-
days maximum was a good definition.
Well, I do too, but clearly the board doesn't.
Can I flip this dollar sign thing around? I know of 2 separate families in this past month that are having trouble getting their houses ready for occupancy, that are scrambling to find places. One in particular that has a child in high school that has to stay in the area, and another one who things are so high and they can't get lumber delivered, they're going to put a cot in the garage in the summer because that's about where they're at.
Yeah.
These people still need a place to stay that would be short-term rental for like 3 months. So you're going to say, oh, after 2 months, you got to move out. You know what I mean? They're not just starting out. One is a retiring age. And this is what we're looking at is it comes under short-term, but it's month to month, 30 days, 30 days, 30 days, and they want to get in their own houses as fast as possible, but it's just not happening.
No, I hear what you're saying, Julie. My only concern is that if there was a really very large population of exactly that sort of person, then your concern would be well-founded, and we would need to rethink that. But we don't have that evidence, number one, and number two, the danger that I perceive with detached ADUs is the genie out of the bottle. We don't really know what's likely to happen with a detached ADU. The potential danger for a detached ADU is they're going to get turned into short-term rentals where everyone seems to be able to make a lot of money now renting their properties. And that is something I don't think this board wants to encourage, because we already have a problem in the town. So
One good thing to remember, though, is that if we allow some of this stuff, that we can regulate it rather than just having it happening out in the woods and we don't know about it. At least everybody would be up to
Go ahead,
fire code.
John.
I think, Julie, you're hitting on it right on the head there. We're creating something that's unenforceable. Who's going to regulate it? We're asking the neighbors to regulate again when we create this wording. Understand that, because nobody else is going to regulate it.
Okay, so are you in favor of limiting it to 30 days or not?
I think, I think creating this regulation is not good.
Okay.
Peter?
As I look at your limit of 120 days maximum rental, my suggestion would be that during that 120 days, which is a third of a year approximately, you're going to be taking in a certain amount of money if you're doing it in the high season. At the same time, if you can end up renting for a lower cost for a year, you're probably actually going to be making more money. And so therefore, to limit it to 120 days just doesn't seem realistic. And if you allow a year-long rental, you're actually going to be providing year-round housing for people who may need it. And so I don't understand how limiting it to 120 days is helpful in the process of helping people who need housing.
Okay. No, Doug, are you in favor of limiting it to 30 days? I'm going to go right down the list.
You mean limiting it to a minimum of 30 days?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Vaughn?
Yes, no
Okay.
120.
Okay. Peter? Okay. Mike?
Rented for periods no longer than 30 days?
No less
Right.
than 30 days.
No,
Minimum.
I'm sorry, less.
Or
Brain doesn't work this late at night. No less than 30 days?
no less than 30 days. Okay.
Heaven forbid there'd be 31 days in a month.
Okay.
Abstaining.
Okay. Brad?
I haven't voted either
You're in
way.
favor of it. Okay.
I have not voted either way,
Okay. All right.
to understand.
Okay. I was just trying to get kind of a sense.
so we're not voting. Can I make a,
We're limiting it to 30 days
then I'm
for-
overruled, okay.
for short-term rentals.
That's-
That's all we're doing right now.
What are we doing, Kathy? I'm not following, sorry.
Just the ones you were talking about, number 7,
Yes,
shall be used as a short-term, neither the single-family home nor the ADU shall be used as a short-term rental, which means limiting it to 30 days maximum.
Minimum.
Minimum.
So if that's the definition of short-term rental, can I cancel the committee meeting next week?
no.
No.
Maybe
no,
make a
no,
suggestion.
No,
Here's-
we're dealing with something different there, I think.
Well, not,
Neither the,
Maybe not.
Maybe
We're
not.
still in draft form here, so that's okay.
make a suggestion as to language. Number 7 might read as follows,
Okay.
if I understand what the board wants. Neither the single-family home nor the ADU shall be rented for periods less than 30 days, period? Is that what you all want?
Yes.
Yeah,
Because the short-term rental
something else.
The short-term rental may have a different definition. And in fact, historically in Wolfeboro, there are week rentals and there are other periods that are very common. So I think that we'd like to just sort of get away from that verbiage of short-term in this particular statement.
Okay.
I can go with that, that's fine.
Okay, did you have anything else?
I haven't heard it.
Right now? Oh, okay. All right, because I just had some comments here. On the A, the second sentence, it talks about site plan regulations. We're not talking about site plan regulations here, right? We're talking about a state statute, which is an ordinance. This is a particular ordinance. Where are we looking here? I'm at A, this second sentence. The planning board shall adopt sections of the site plan regulations.
no, that's all gone. That paragraph is gone.
That can just say accessory dwelling units, right?
This section is enacted in accordance with provisions of RSA 674, 71 through 73, and RSA 674, 21. Yes, because we
Yeah.
put the waivers in somewhere else. Yes,
Yeah, okay.
And the rest of that is gone?
yes.
Yeah, okay. Let's see, dropping down to the bottom of A, that paragraph, I don't I don't really understand what this says. It says we're not specifically preempted by the provisions of this article.
No, that's all gone.
That's all gone?
From 674:21 period, that is A.
Okay, good. So that's gone. All right, then, the conditional permits, how are we going to, how are we going to deal with this? Because with conditional permits, we can waive some. Should we say which ones we should waive and which ones we should not?
Well, under E, it says, under 674:21, the planning board's hereby authorized to grant a conditional use permit to allow detached accessory dwelling units with restrictions and requirements of this section. Planning board is further authorized to grant waivers to requirements and standard conditions as part of their review. So functionally, you fill out the conditional use permit application for a detached ADU.
Okay, but how do we decide which ones we're going to waive? Does
They
that
have to
mean-
request, they can request a waiver to any of it, but you would
Well,
then have to grant the
That's my
waiver.
point, that's my point, I think. Because the structure shall be located to the side of the house. Okay, I think we've all been saying that. The structure shall be architecturally compatible. We could have some conditional things there if we want.
You'd have
Is
some
that right?
flexibility there, yep.
Okay, the no additional driveway curb cut, could that be waived? Because
Yes.
okay, but then can we take out or is approved by the driveway permit administrator? Because if the planning board is going to waive it, then it's really not.
I don't think the planning board would grant I think the first step would be to see what the driveway permit administrator or their designee said as part of the application, or in reviewing the application, then the planning board would weigh in on a waiver.
That would be the procedure.
Okay, so we go to the driveway administrator first?
Yes.
Okay, all right, good. Okay, the conversion of an existing accessory structure, the structure must comply with current setbacks. I don't think that should be waived.
So the board wouldn't have to, someone can always request a waiver.
I
It doesn't
know.
have to be approved.
If you don't waive it, it goes to ZBA.
Correct.
Okay, but I don't think we should be waiving setbacks, is basically what I'm saying.
We don't have to waive setbacks, but if they can make an argument that is convincing, and we can save them the necessity of going to ZBA with their application for setback approval.
Every property is so unique. I mean, you may have a property that is buffered by, I don't know, a ledge that you don't even know. So if you have a reason that there is no meaningful purpose of the setback, and you already have a structure, I think they should be allowed to argue why that is the case. Not just say blanket, no, that's why we have waivers.
Okay, the reason I brought it up is that our last meeting, Tavis gave a for instance, and he talked about putting a second floor onto an existing structure. And, that made me think, wait a minute, what are we talking about here? I mean, would we allow that?
Maybe not. In
But
which case-
maybe.
No, not necessarily one way or the other, but the conditional use permit gives us the flexibility to make that decision. If we make this a special exception, then we
Yeah.
have no control. It goes
Yeah,
away from us. If we want to have control in a rational sense, then we make it a conditional use permit where we do have control over every single part of it.
Okay, all right.
That's how I think.
Okay, going on to 2, parcels shall meet the minimum lot sizing of the underlying zoning district. Does that mean that all goes away also?
Nothing goes away. They have to
Well,
justify
no,
why they,
well, as far as-
everything you're going to read is subject to a waiver request
Yeah,
if they want.
Well, that's what
yes.
I mean. I mean,
Yes.
does that mean that can be granted a waiver?
If
Correct.
the board wants to, yes. Based upon Vaughn's argument for special conditions of each individual property, maybe there will be an application where that would be appropriate. But if we don't allow it, it goes to ZBA.
If they choose.
Well, if they choose to continue, sure.
Okay,
Proceed.
all right, and the same with the condition of the 2 bedrooms, that would also go away? I mean, I guess my thought is, we have the attached,
No, I don't think so.
it wouldn't.
No, because the conditional use permit is really about section E. Section F with the 2 bedrooms and 1
okay.
ADU per dwelling, et cetera, applies to all.
Yeah, okay, well,
So I don't think the waivers would go past the conditional
Right.
use permit.
Right.
Okay, the
Agreed.
section that I'm looking at is in E. It's,
Correct. So
um,
everything from E 1, 2, and 3, everything on the bottom of page 1 and to the top half of page 2 could be granted a waiver. Now, again, just
okay,
like in
so-
site plan
So
review,
then, yeah, okay.
just like in site plan review, if somebody starts looking for multiple waivers, the board tends to perk its ears up and say, wait a minute, what's happening?
Okay. All right, so, anyway, the 2 for the no ADU shall have more than 2 bedrooms, that could also be waived
No,
No,
in F.
no. Only the things in E.
Right. F is standard conditions.
Okay,
Those are standard conditions that have
where
to be met.
permitted by conditional use permit.
An accessory
And
dwelling unit.
conditional use permit means that we can grant waivers.
That's E only.
I'm just
Where-
trying to get,
This is, let me try. Where permitted by conditional use permit, comma, an accessory dwelling unit shall comply with the following.
okay,
So he
But
shall
that-
comply.
okay.
He's
And
got
that
his
means
conditional-
you cannot grant a waiver of that.
And then in
That's-
D, just to go back up, ADUs permitted by right, those proposed ADUs that are within or attached via conditioned space to the existing single-family dwelling are permitted by right and subject to the criteria for approval outlined in F below. So D goes with F and E goes with F. But waivers would only apply to those things in E.
Right,
Okay, in E.
right.
Okay, all right. Okay, the only other concern that I have is on 4, and I brought this up before, no ADU shall exceed 30% of the total habitable floor area of the single-family dwelling or 750 square feet, whichever is larger. And I was concerned because I think we should put a limit on the size of these apartments to 1,000 square feet or 1,200 square feet, rather than, say, the 30%. I mean, that,
So 30% not to exceed 1,200 square feet total?
no, I was just saying take out the 30% and put in a maximum as well as a minimum square foot.
At the same time, isn't it useful to say that this dwelling is going to be smaller than the original? So in other words, if you ended up having a house which was only 1,200 square feet, is it appropriate to have another 1,200 square foot building put as an accessory unit? So if you're dealing with a 30% amount, and then we say up to
Okay,
some value, I think that clarifies it.
Yeah, I think we have to allow the ADU builder flexibility. If he has a really large place and he wants to build an ADU to it, limiting him to 1,200 square feet, which may be in comparison to the existing dwelling tiny, is not going to be much of an inducement for him to build it.
okay,
You give him 30% of the total habitable floor area of his current existing dwelling, then he knows he can build up to that size. But you're limiting him to 750 total square feet.
Okay,
Mike,
yeah.
like 1,000 square foot, that's the size of my house. So basically, essentially what you're saying is somebody can build another house on a property. And that's what we're pointing out here.
That's
It's
kind
not
of
it's not a small attachment on a building. You're adding another house to these places. Think about this again.
Well, number 4, I think, was originally written because interior was the only option. So I think it was the board determining that no one should convert more than 30% of their existing home to an ADU, or no more than 30% of the existing home or 750 square feet, whichever is larger. The board wants to change the ratio. When considering detached, that's fine. I just left it the same because it really doesn't change the equation, whether it's attached or detached. I mean, yes, to John's point, yes, there are 20,000 square foot homes being built, so 30% seems quite large. But again, if you have a lot large enough for a 30,000 square foot
That's
home,
right.
it's going to be proportionate on the
Right.
lot.
And that's the kind of ADU they're going to want to build anyway.
Okay, the only reason I'm bringing this up is that I think some of these questions are going to come up, and I want everybody to be thinking about them and, deal with it, I guess. So,
Can I-
so that's why I wanted to bring it up. We're trying to provide an additional housing opportunity in this town for people that can't find places to stay, whether it's for 6 months or a year or 5 years. And that's what I think we're trying to do.
The statute's very clear. The board cannot limit it to less than 750 square
Yeah,
feet.
no, I know that.
Everywhere from there up
I-
is up to the board.
Oh, okay, all right.
So even though this is basically we're granting somebody the ability, this isn't an RSA passed by the state. We're allowing something, so there is no oversight regulation that says we can't create something less than 750, is there?
Yeah,
It's state statute.
yeah,
Yeah,
the state
RSA says you
statute does
can't.
say that. Right?
It can't be
Yeah.
smaller than 750.
750.
You
How
can't
much
require
bigger
it to
you
be
want it to go
less
is up
than
to you.
750.
Can I make a suggestion? It seems to me that apart from questions we have on F4, the rest of this document is ready to be presented to a public forum. Can we ask the planner to think about F4, ramifications thereof, and bring it back to the board so we can discuss it one more time, so we know for sure before we send it off to the public forum that we feel comfortable with the size of the habitable ADU? The habitable size of the ADU, I beg your pardon?
Okay, sure,
If you look at other parts of the regulation, it says there's, 2 bedrooms is the maximum. And so a reasonable amount might be 2,000 square feet, because that's a reasonably large house. And you could easily put 2 bedrooms there. So,
I would hope.
anyway, but, it may end up being that, you don't want to have that 8,000 or 9,000 square foot home building the 3,000 square foot ADU. So it might be that there's 2,000 square feet. I agree with Mike saying
Yeah,
that,
okay.
we don't want to make it so small that people don't want to build it. But
right.
we also don't want it so large that it's another mansion.
Right.
right, okay.
So could I get some clarity here? So the regulation in the RSA is for an attached ADU.
No. The statute says that every lot that you can build a single-family home on can have an ADU. It's up to the town whether you allow attached only or if you allow detached.
As well as attached.
So the Wolfeboro-ism is that attached are allowed by statute. That's because that's how the town accepted it out of the gate. Every lot has to be afforded an ADU.
And then further to that, you can't limit the ADU to less than 750 square feet.
Correct.
If we allow detached.
No, it's
No,
not.
Period.
at all.
Whether it's
any
attached or
of them.
detached, you can't restrict it to less than 750 square
You
feet.
have to have an ADU wherever there's a single-family home.
Have to allow.
And it can't be less than, it can't be, it can, 750 feet is the minimum that you're allowed.
No.
No. You can make it as small as you want.
You just
but
can't
you can't limit it
require
to
it
less
to
than
be
that.
less than
You can't
750.
require it to be less than 750 square feet. Sorry.
Okay, so basically what we're doing is we're presenting this ordinance where we're allowing the attached accessory units by right in all districts, and the detached would need to come in here for a conditional use permit, and then this board would have the opportunity to grant waivers of some of the standards.
Correct.
Okay. All right, is that everybody?
I'd like to make a recommendation for
Okay.
for the format of the forum, that we start with a very simply explained detail of what the state RSA says, and then where the flexibility that the towns have to regulate and where they don't, so that it's very clear, because I think we have confusion, to the people in the forum, what's dictated by the state and where we have flexibility to regulate. Because if we keep spinning like this with the public, it could be very confusing.
Yeah, right.
Well, that's why I thought we should get something that's firm to present to the public rather than work it out with them at that time. And I think we're close to that with just one concern.
Right, yeah, I agree. I think we're close to it, but I think it's a good idea to have a synopsis of the state statute.
Yep.
And then, Vaughn, you had suggested before that we have a brief history of why we haven't allowed detached accessory structures.
I never did that. That was you.
Yeah,
No,
yeah,
no, I would like
the
to,
ha-
Yeah.
The habit, yes, you
Yes.
did ask me to do that.
I don't remember doing that.
Well, you did.
What, John, say something?
well,
Because I've
Kathy,
been dutifully doing it.
Kathy, I would like you to present to the public why we don't have detached accessory dwelling units right now.
Okay.
I would like that explained, for sure.
Yeah, okay, well, I mean, I thought what we wanted to say is that we used to have them, which is why we have a lot. Then as zoning progressed, we decided not to have them, and now we're going in the other direction.
Let's
So,
be clear with what we used to have
Yes,
and then
yeah,
what we
right.
stopped. We didn't used to have detached accessory dwelling units.
No, that's-
Because there weren't any such things back
Right.
then. We had bunkhouses.
That's-
Those are the things that we prohibited.
yeah,
So there's a distinction to be made
and
there.
boarding houses,
And
we
boarding
also prohibit that.
Right.
Yeah,
But
no,
we never used to back in the olden days.
that's right.
Because my
So,
house was a
so I have a
boarding house.
question to Tavis. Oh, right now, are there currently detached accessory dwelling units being built in Wolfeboro?
No, it's currently illegal to build a detached accessory dwelling unit in Wolfeboro.
You can replace one.
If you have a legal existing nonconformity, you can repair and
Replace
replace it, yes. But they are not legal existing nonconforming accessory dwelling units in Wolfeboro.
Okay, so I'll work on getting the, what the zoning requirements were, and Tavis, do you want to do the state statutes? or-
I'll do the state statutes. I'll play with the language in F4 and 7 a little bit, including what the board brought up. I'll discuss that with council
okay,
if
and
the
then-
group wants.
Yeah, then we also had you sent us something with some definition sections, and I can't seem to find that.
You want to do that after we do inclusionary
Yeah,
zoning?
right, but there was one that was right, that was sort of relevant.
Oh, we can do them in any order. It's up to the board.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I was looking, yes, the accessory dwelling.
Do that now, or do you want to?
Well,
after we're finished?
no, it had to do with this one. But, yeah, okay.
You want to do that now?
Yes, because I thought we had talked about that. But there was one about removing, the accessory dwelling building or structure. And you took out in that definition, the accessory building or structure shall be limited to a single half bath located on the ground floor. Why did you take that out?
Well, if you can have a detached accessory dwelling unit, you can't limit an accessory building or structure to a half bath on the ground floor.
Okay, well, isn't this the one that we took to town meeting and people voted that it was?
Yes, the board added this to accessory building or structure to prevent people from illegally creating apartments in accessory structures. It led to enough confusion that a contractor came in with a petition to remove the same sentence last year.
Yeah, right.
And the board
Right.
said it didn't have time to discuss it. But then as soon as the conversation of detached accessory dwelling units came up, you have to take that definition out or you allow something that you don't allow.
This is what I made a comment about at last meeting. We went through this whole process there with voting in the March article, and now we're going to contradict and take it right out.
We can't take it right out. This has to be voted on.
I
Yeah.
get that, but our intention is contrary to what we were doing in March.
Yeah, right. I mean, I think that needs a little more discussion was the only reason I brought it up.
So we're going to limit an accessory dwelling unit to having a half bathroom on the ground floor?
Well,
That's the problem.
yeah, I know, but that also has its history. That it went to ZBA, and ZBA asked the planning board to put it in that you could have a half bath, and so we did, and then somebody brought a petition. The voters overwhelmingly denied that petition vote. So
Because we
all
didn't.
I'm saying is that this needs a little more discussion.
Well, if we're going to have detached accessory dwelling units, that's got to come out of that definition. If we're not going to do it,
Okay, but it could
just
be,
wasting our time.
it could be that you would qualify that if it's a garage, you could have it. If it's an accessory, a detached accessory
To be clear, a
dwelling.
bathroom is not considered habitable space.
Yeah, I know, I don't really want to get into it right now, but,
I didn't bring it up.
no. Oh, okay, well, I think it's kind of an important issue. That was all I was trying to bring up.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Peter.
Isn't this issue, though, a change in what the board really was thinking back when we were talking about, the half bath in the garage so that you do whatever and then it's going to expand? And I think that in the past few months, the board has started thinking about the need to have accessory dwelling units. And therefore, this garage, which somebody may be trying to make into their accessory dwelling unit, now ends up being something that we're more interested in considering.
it can be primitive.
And it could be primitive. At the same time, if that garage is there and it ends up fulfilling the requirements of an accessory dwelling unit where the person doesn't actually have to build the unit, it's already there and you just modify it, maybe that's what we're doing and that's the direction we're sort of taking. And I think it's an evolution of
Okay,
how
well,
we're-
just as long as everybody knows the directions we're taking.
Right,
I
and all I'm
wasn't sure
saying
that
is-
everybody picked up on this.
Right, but it seems like there's been an evolution in our thinking,
Yeah.
and so we just need to be aware of that.
We don't have to, just because this board has decided on something, stay with it forever.
Well, we could get around this by leaving that language in with the half bath unless there is an accessory dwelling unit permit. Because then once it turns into an ADU, then it can have a bathroom.
And it has other requirements.
Requirements,
So therefore, that ends up being okay. I mean, I would agree with
So
that.
you don't end up with the garage with a full bathroom, but they have had to come in for the whole ADU application to have that bathroom.
Is there a problem with a full bath on the second floor of a garage? Because my response is, fine, I'll write whatever the board wants to put in front of the voters, but what is a half bath and what is the ground floor? These are the questions that have circulated since that language went in, because it makes no sense to anyone outside the board.
Okay, well, it did back in 10 years ago when somebody came and asked for a bathroom in their garage
Isn't there a
with a
general,
second floor, so it made some sense.
isn't there a
Maybe
general
the-
understanding what a ground floor means? And we all kind of know what ground floor means?
No.
The floor on the ground?
Well,
If you're on the
actually,
hill, they're both
yeah.
on the ground. I don't mean to go into the weeds, but one project in particular, you can walk out this floor and you can walk out that
So,
floor. They're
yeah,
both the ground floor.
Yeah, Mike, if you look at the house that I live in, it's sometimes called a raised ranch. And we have my office, 2 bedrooms and a bathroom in what technically is considered the basement.
You have 2 ground floors then? All right, well, whatever.
Okay, all right,
So you could
well,
have 2 half-baths.
I was just going to
this,
Does that make a full bath?
Which equals full on bath floor?
1 foot in each.
And
Okay,
I think we'd had some discussion a few meetings ago about using the word half bath as opposed to allowing a sink and toilet.
okay,
Kathy, I think
All right.
there's, in my mind, there's quite a difference between an accessory dwelling unit, which we've been talking about quite a while here, an accessory building or structure.
yeah,
Because at the end of that last sentence there, under accessory building or structure, it kind of talks about these could be, a garage, swimming, an accessory building for swimming pools, a tennis court, something like that, to have that half bath in. It's what I'm kind of picturing as an accessory building or structure, and I have no problem in leaving that, be limited to a half bath, because then you're not putting in the tub and the whole 9 yards of stuff. And I think what we've been talking about accessory dwelling units and allowing the full bath, obviously, and stuff, because we're allowing up to 2 bedrooms and everything, makes sense. So I do see, in my mind, quite a difference between the 2 types of structures that we're talking about here.
right.
And I don't think there'd be a problem having 2 different, acceptable type bathrooms being allowed there, so.
I
It
think,
was my understanding that the half bath on the ground floor was directly and aimed at preventing somebody from doing the alleged illegal conversion in the future.
Right.
Yeah.
well, I
Yeah,
think,
yes, it was.
So if there's a way to do exactly what we're allowing someone to do with a permit, do we need the language to prevent the alleged illegal conversion?
I think that Brad's suggestion is really commonsensical. We have 2 definitions, one an ADU and one an accessory building or structure. And they're both defining different cats and dogs. So why don't we simply, suggestion would be, leave the accessory building structure definition as it exists now. Don't delete the sentence. Avoid the political ramifications of not deleting that sentence, or deleting that sentence. And assume that we have 2 different definitions between
Right.
2 different
So functionally
Which is what
speaking,
is
it's-
shown here.
I still think that there is a place to have a shower in a lot of places. Say you have a garage, you've got a place that's working with chemicals,
Yeah.
you have,
A shower house for a pool?
It typically comes up with the pool houses. These aren't the
yeah.
people that are going
But
to do a
I'm also
detached
thinking that
ADU.
you had
but-
a spill at work. Wouldn't it really be nice if you were in this type of an environment that you have the shower in the locker room to to hose off with? There's a lot of different places that could use that sort of thing. I had to send a girl home one day because she spilled stuff on her pants. There was no other way around it. There was nothing we could do. Sometimes I mean, why would it make any difference if we had a stand-up shower in the back of the shop instead of the floor drain that you have
Okay, well, that.
The water to dump in from the
All I'm
bucket.
saying is that that discussion should be a separate discussion, not part of the detached accessory structure.
And if we do
That
what
is-
Brad
that's-
suggested and not do anything
Right,
with it, then
yes.
that's what we can do.
Yeah, right.
Well, we're actually talking about two different things, because we're talking about an accessory dwelling unit.
Yes, right.
And that has a certain section of regulations, and then we have accessory buildings, which is a garage, which is a woodshed, which is a whatever, and that's a different
Yes, right.
So
That's-
therefore, we'd like to make sure that you can have your cabana with a shower, so you get out of the swimming pool and you take a shower
Can't do that.
in a half bath.
The people that want the shower in the pool house don't want a half bath.
Whatever, but I mean, there's
I
a
get where
house
you're
there.
going,
Whatever. But the point is that there's some building where you can take a shower which after you get out of your pool. And so therefore, that ends up being an accessory building as compared to an accessory dwelling unit which has bedrooms.
So let it stand.
I'll let it stand for now. We'll see where council goes with that.
What do you mean, where council goes with it? Aren't we going to discuss it as a separate item some night on an agenda? That's all I was thinking about.
Absolutely can.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, that's,
But point of fact, an accessory dwelling unit, however we want to characterize it at the planning board, is in fact an accessory structure to the primary dwelling. Ergo, an accessory dwelling unit. It just,
So accessory dwelling unit is a subset of an accessory structure.
Yes.
You could argue that. But
other than the accessory dwelling unit has habitable space.
And it's detached. The accessory building is detached.
Getting silly now.
okay, on to the next. Inclusionary housing. So Tavish, you did some updates on the inclusionary
This is
housing.
fairly similar to what you saw at the last meeting, as clarification about not making it applicable, again, in the shorefront residential area. I took all of the definitions out, moved them over. We go back to the definition sheet later. Basically, what this is getting down to is that any project that proposes to include affordable housing as outlined in this chapter of at least 15% of its proposed units is eligible to increase the yield plan density of the parcel by 15%. So to understand that, you have to know what yield plan means, and that's one of the definitions that moved, and what affordable means. Now, one of the questions I have in this, and going through the statutes just again before this meeting, is whether the term affordable is the appropriate term. I'm using affordable to mean everything that the statute on affordable includes. The definition that I carried over into affordable housing is literally from the statute, but the statute itself is entitled workforce housing, which then defines affordable. So it really is workforce housing, elderly not-for-profit housing, anything, as long as you meet the affordable definition, which is combined rental and utility cost or combined mortgage, loan, debt services, property taxes, and required insurance that do not exceed 30% of a household's gross annual income. That's 674.58.1 is where that's coming from. So as long as somebody's proposing at least 15% of the units to be that, you can take the parcel's yield density and increase it by 15%. Then it has the other paragraph in there that says if you're on water and sewer, the planning board has the ability to go up to a maximum of 30%. But I would suggest the board wait until the survey's done to see how many projects can go to the 30%. The survey on water and sewer, that is.
Do I see that new definition of affordable anywhere on this document?
It's over in the definitions. So I struck all of the definitions. On the inclusionary, it says move to 175, 175. And then over on the definition, it says delete per changes to Article 5, inclusionary zoning. It changes the affordable housing, section 175.31. See how that works?
Nope.
No?
I don't know where you are, and I can't find you right
Read
now.
the definitions?
Oh, I beg your pardon, I found you.
Here.
Oh, this thing. Okay.
This one, move it from this and put it into 175.
This is where the language is. Okay, I was looking at the wrong page.
Oh.
Sorry.
Okay,
Minor issues, second page. We're down about in the middle. There's a capital A that's crossed off with an S as used in this article.
It needs to go back. Well, that's all going to come out. 17531 goes away.
Okay, so that all should be with a red line.
It's
through
all
it.
crossed out. yeah.
Fine, okay.
But while you're on that page, right above that section, right above, so on the second page, just above section 17531, I've amended the paragraph just above that to say may appeal to the Superior Court as provided in 67715, or Housing Appeals Board, put in the appropriate statute for that. It's simply making it clear that you don't appeal inclusionary to the zoning board.
You got the language I sent you?
Yes,
Is that going to be incorporated?
yes.
All righty. The paragraph above that begins development, blah, blah, blah. Third line, after the word zoning ordinance, struck out, capitalize the A of article.
Yeah.
And on the second line, change the word as to under. I would prefer that as opposed to as, but that's a matter of choice.
Under a conditional use permit?
Yeah.
okay.
That's all I had.
Okay, for this section, we talk about the statutory authority under 674:21. Should we add 674:58, which is the workforce housing ordinance or statute?
Where are you, Kathy?
I'm on the first page, 175:29, statutory authority.
So you're thinking under the authority of workforce, under the proviso of 67421, right?
Yeah, and then
Okay.
add and 674:58, which is the workforce
Correct.
housing.
By the authority of
I mean,
RSA 674:58.
That's kind of a question, because it kind of goes in a little different direction, but
It does, but it makes it clear that the intent is to invoke the workforce statute through the innovative land use control, which is 67421. Yep.
okay, how do we determine the density? I mean, I know that we have to come up with a yield plan.
So if you have 6 units per acre, and somebody comes in with a 10-acre piece, they get 60 units. Let's just keep it simple. If 15% of those 60 units are going to be affordable, then they get 60 plus 15% for the whole property.
Okay, so where do you come up with the 6 units per acre?
Well, the
zoning.
central business district
Yeah,
allows
okay,
6 families per unit.
all
If it
right.
was residential zone, it would be 2 units per acre.
Yeah, okay, all right. So that's how you would determine the density?
Yes.
I'm just thinking of the Harriman Hill project, and, you know, we had an increased density on that. But I know that we had a large parcel, so I guess it probably would come out the same as 2 units per acre.
Well, it could be more. I mean, while Harriman Hill specifically is not in the water and sewer district, it has town water and
Well,
sewer, so it could
yes,
have
it
gotten,
does. Yes,
under
it
this,
does.
gotten a 30% bump to get to where it was.
Yeah.
I don't know what the,
Yeah, no, we have
The net
water, we
density
have
was-
water and sewer. We're
that's what I
connected.
mean. So under this, it would not just be 15%, it could be up to 30%.
Oh, okay, okay. All right, I'm just a little uneasy about taking out the ability to be able to construct a whole development for workforce housing. But basically, when we talked about it, you said that we still would be able to do that under the inclusionary zoning.
Any project can do it.
Say again?
Okay,
Any
but-
project can do it, whether you're elderly,
okay,
not-for-profit,
yeah, I know,
or
but
not
we've
elderly.
taken out the ability for nonprofits to do it.
No. Any project can do it.
This applies to any
Not for profit, for profit, for maximum profit. Any development that wants to put in 15% affordable can have a 15% increase.
Okay, well, that's what I'm saying. We have 100% affordable.
Correct. So you
And
could,
you can't do that anymore, according to this.
correct.
Okay, that's,
Well, you could,
that's a
there's
concern
no-
that I
there's
have.
nothing preventing you from doing 100% affordable. This is
Yeah.
trying to get people that don't want to do any to do some.
Okay, all right. My concern is that we're taking the ability to do that out of the ordinance.
No.
Yeah, we
Anyone
are.
that wants to do 100% affordable can walk in tomorrow and get site plan approval.
You're looking for a,
This is an incentive to encourage people to do affordable.
Yeah, no, I understand that, but,
what was the incentive to do 100% in affordable?
well, because we had an ordinance that specifically said that that's what the ordinance allowed, so, okay. I mean, do you understand what I'm saying?
No.
It seems like we're taking out that section of the,
Let me ask it a different way. What in our regulations prevents you from doing a 100% affordable housing project?
if I came in and asked to do that, you would say, oh, okay, and
You need
there's
site plan
no
approval.
ordinance to go by. What ordinance would you tell me that I would need to adhere to?
Regardless of how it's rented, sold, or otherwise, you're held to the density of the parcel.
Okay, all right.
I
But
guess-
if you have a minimum of 15% affordable, then you get a 15% bonus. If it's on water and sewer, you could get a 30% bonus. Now, if you come in wanting 100%, you still get the 15 or 30% bonus. It's 15 is the minimum percentage to get the bonus.
Yeah, there's no maximum.
Right.
Correct.
Okay, any comments, folks, on this?
One comment, question for the planner. I think it's the fifth page, 175, 33, et cetera. Same question I asked the last time. Has this been vetted to make sure that we have all of the ramifications of the changes that we've made and the new statutory requirements?
I believe so, yes.
All right, thank you.
Oh, it still requires the covenant and all of the fun stuff that goes with it, yes. It's still a management nightmare.
Okay, so for the density, there's no change to that. That's basically what you're saying, except that if you're going to provide the affordable housing, you then get 15% for doing that, right?
Or up to 30.
Or
Now,
up
if
to-
you
or
want,
up
I
to
can
30.
look at the statute and see if the board can put that up to 100.
Okay,
This is the model language from the state holding it at 30%.
okay, and,
But that's just an inclusionary bonus. I mean, theoretically, if you had 10 acres and 6 units per acre and you did 100%, you could do
60 plus 15.
60 plus 15. So you'd be at 95 units of affordable where 60 would be allowed otherwise.
Right.
okay, and what about the multifamily? I mean,
nine,
you said you hadn't included that.
No, I didn't include it yet. What I have to do is I put at the end of the next thing that has the definitions and recommendations.
Okay. All right, so you would, if you're doing multifamily, you would do it the exact same way that we're talking about that you just mentioned?
Yeah, it's units per acre, whether they're independent units or together.
Hasn't it always been units per acre?
We haven't always allowed it every place.
No, agreed, we haven't.
No,
allowed it
you
every
allow it
place.
in the residential, the
Yeah.
village residential, the commercial
Right.
areas, et cetera.
Yeah, but where we do
Oh.
allow it, it's units per acre,
Yes.
the density.
Yeah, right,
basis.
yes, that's true. Okay, so this inclusionary zoning takes in the whole town, right? All the zones.
Correct.
And,
Except the shorefront.
except for the shorefront. And what about the Central Business District, Wolfeboro Falls, and Bay Street? How would we do the density for that?
Each of those are allowed 6 units per acre, so you take 6
yes, I
times the
know, but-
acreage, and then if 15% of those units are affordable, you'd add 15%.
Okay, all right, very good.
I don't know if we have water and sewer for it, so, but it's going to be interesting to see how the survey results come back to account for that. But we don't have to go to warrant until after the survey,
Right,
ideally. I don't know where the survey is or what that's going to tell us.
okay.
But you
any-
effectively allow this, these are the same percentages that have been allowed all along. It's just,
Okay.
right now you have to go through 4 different ordinances to figure out which one you're doing.
Okay, all right, very good. Any other comments?
Can
Yep,
we look at the suggested changes
to the
to coincide with amendments?
to
to
the
ADU and
definitions.
inclusionary? Yeah, I guess these are, well, they're not all definitions, but some of them are. The definition for ADU in the third line provides independent living facilities for 1 or more persons, yet aren't we allowing 2 bedrooms max? How do we reconcile 2 bedrooms with 1 or more persons? Is there a problem or not?
It's the same definition that we use right now. All I did was move it from ADU to definitions.
Understood. My question simply is, if we're allowing ADUs to a 2-bedroom maximum, and we're saying that these are living facilities for 1 or more persons, okay, that's included. Never mind. Second page, 17565, permitted uses. Are we permitting detached dwelling units?
It's not what that says. This is what the town adopted in every other zone but this zone. 1 single detached dwelling per lot with 1 accessory dwelling unit. I don't agree with the wording, but I went for consistency with every other zone. So if you look at
One
A,
single-
1 single detached dwelling, B,
Yeah,
1
right.
single detached dwelling per lot with 1 accessory dwelling unit, accessory structures, 1 boathouse, et cetera.
Then maybe we should put it with attached accessory
Yes,
dwelling
right.
unit?
Yes, we should.
Well,
If that's,
it's all going to go in wherever the vote goes.
Well, I understand,
Quite honestly.
but it caught me, so maybe it might catch somebody
Right.
else.
yeah,
With 1 attached.
Since we are
okay,
making a
everybody, we're
distinction.
on the definitions. Tavis, just to go back.
Within or attached, technically, to meet the,
Okay, could we just back up for a minute? Because I still think that everybody's got to see how this is going to lay out in the zoning ordinance. And so we need something that is going to show people, the deletions, and then how it's going to, is this going to be a housing ordinance? Or however we're going to describe it. We
which
need-
part? This part that we just mentioned?
No, I was asking to back up because I hadn't quite finished with the other item.
Jumped the gun.
And so I just think that we really need to show everybody where this is going. We're including the affordable housing discretionary, and multifamily. And that, somehow or other, we've got to present that in a manner to this board to start out with.
Okay.
Oh, okay, that was my only thought.
It is in the purpose to the amendment,
To which amendment?
the inclusionary zoning amendment. The purpose of the article is to encourage blah, 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 manufactured, elderly, open space, traditional, workforce, multifamily.
Okay, but it's still called inclusionary zoning.
Well, inclusionary zoning is the statutory reference. That's what the statute calls it.
Okay, well, we also just added workforce housing to that
Yeah,
statute.
I didn't change that. Right now, Chapter 175 in zoning, Part 1, Planning and Zoning, Article 5, inclusionary zoning. So everything you see is red line and strike through of the current Article 5, quote, inclusionary zoning. And then we filled in.
Yeah, no, yeah, right, no, I understand that. I just want to make sure everybody else understands it. So the whole chapter will be called inclusionary zoning, and it's going to be clear to everybody that this is for manufactured housing community, elderly housing community, workforce housing, and multifamily housing. Because that really just needs to be clarified to people. You know, so, okay?
Okay.
And so I'm not sure if we want to call it inclusionary zoning or how we want to define it, but, you know, we can discuss that again.
Well, if you call the title, if you title the article inclusionary zoning, then you're adhering to statutory authority.
Right,
And then you have your purpose of the article, which describes why you're doing what you're doing.
okay.
And that will include the language that's in red there.
So you think
Right.
that's enough
It's in the
of an
first paragraph.
explanation?
That's the way we do it with all the other ordinances that we
Yeah.
have. We define what we're doing in the statement of purpose of the article.
Okay,
I think that, well, it should be, it would be okay to me.
okay, all right. Anybody else have any thoughts? Okay, all right, let's continue on then with the definitions, because under yield plan, you remove market rate units. Was there a reason for doing that? Or just, because that's in our existing?
Because the density calculation isn't based on market rate units, it's units per acre, not market rate units per acre.
Okay, all right. Okay. All right, then we go down to the shorefront lot improvement standards.
Really, all that happened in there was taking out the word stormwater management and just saying a plan prepared by an engineer, because this group and the stormwater group made it very clear that the new stormwater regs that generate a stormwater management plan was not to be the same plan that applied in the shorefront residential. And this is procedurally what's happening now, is that an engineer is putting together a plan that must be implemented to infiltrate increased stormwater runoff from all square footage exceeding 20%. I added the word all.
Yeah,
And then I put in the suggested language, this provision shall also apply to all projects where pre-project/existing conditions and post-project conditions exceed 20% lot coverage.
okay,
Because it's not clear right now what you do if you come in at 32% and you end up at 31%, other than you get some semblance of an attaboy for decreasing. Now, there is the next sentence, any that's previously approved before I got here, any project proposing a decrease or no change in impervious shall not be required to provide a professionally engineered plan, provided the decrease in coverage represents a 1% minimum. But,
I think that should be increased.
okay, I didn't want to touch it. It was
Yeah,
just
yeah,
done by the
right.
town 2 years ago.
Just the same as that a 1% reduction doesn't seem like much of anything. Have any thoughts about that, John?
Well, my hang-up personally is that the second part of paragraph C, and if any grid segment within the waterfront buffer does not meet the minimum required 25-point tree and sapling score, each deficient grid segment must be planted with additional vegetation to at least achieve the minimum required score. I think I've been on 4 projects out of the close to 100 I've seen since I've been here that could even attempt to plant that quantity of vegetation. Because most of them have beaches or rocky slopes or things that simply limit vegetation. Now, I get it if someone has a paved patio that goes right up to the water and they're going to decrease it, they need to plant it back. But planting back to that 25-point score is very aggressive.
Okay, well, we've got a couple members of the Shorefront Committee here, Vaughn and John.
And the
And
concern I
myself.
have, the reason I bring it up is the only relief to that is a variance based on where it is in the regulations.
Well, if it's in the shorefront district, we should try to make them, put them in other areas that are nearby. I don't want to see them pull that regulation away. And any vegetation is going to be good.
Oh, but this doesn't say any vegetation. This says you must achieve your 25% score in every 25 by 25 grid. All of them, even if you're not proposing work in it. Even if it never had vegetation. That's what that
Yeah.
says.
Right. Yes, and we wanted them to add vegetation.
Yeah, but they've been allowed to do something, so now we're asking them to repay that back in vegetation. That's why I'm understanding it.
Right.
I think Tavis's point is that if they're doing something, they may be required, according to this, to add vegetation where there was none before.
Yeah.
And perhaps to an unreasonable amount. If they have a 100-foot beach where there was no vegetation, and then they put in whatever work is required to trigger this, then they're going to have to put in vegetation to cover the beach area, which I think perhaps is unreasonable.
Oh, my point was, I would rather see them put it in another area, except the beach, but still put it somewhere on the property.
That's not what this says.
Right.
I get
agree
what
with
you're
you.
saying, but that's not what this says.
Right, I
Okay.
agree with you, but as Tavis said, that's not what it says. So certainly there should be a reasonable restoration or improvement of the vegetation, but not perhaps to the way this is strictly worded.
Right, well, that's why, Vaughn, do you remember these
Well,
discussions?
I'm a little shocked by it because since we had these discussions, they changed the grid segment from 50 to 25. So I don't know
right.
how 25 got in here. Because it wasn't like that when we did it.
No, wasn't.
Right,
So that gave a little bit of flexibility. But I'm shocked to see the 25
I know
in
where
here.
the 25 came from. I don't have the full regulation in front of me, but when you look at the grids, it's a 50 grid measured in 25 by 25 squares.
It is now.
It
didn't
is
used to
now.
be.
I don't know
Yeah.
where and
Yeah.
this follows what the language above it says, but I can think of 4 places I've been in the last week that the first 50 feet from the reference line is all beach or steep rocky
Right.
with no vegetation. The development is actually 150 feet behind that, so now you're 200 feet away from the lake, and the existing mansion, if you will, is well over 20%. They wanted to extend the eaves, they triggered a shorefront permit, and they said, you got to plant the beach. And they said, never mind, we'll keep the eaves where they are. But I could not draw a correlation between extending somebody's eaves. Keep in mind, the eave came down over a patio. So the water was hitting the patio anyway, regardless of where the eave terminated. But they decided just to let the water keep running in their patio door because they didn't want to plant the beach.
Okay.
So That's a very site-specific, but this paragraph has a lot of weight that I don't think was intended, particularly by what you just suggested.
I don't remember it being like this. I remember it being 50-foot segments. I think I'll look in the file, see if I can find what we did.
Yeah, right.
Well, even if it was supposed to be 50, this is what was voted on in 20.
In 2020?
Yeah.
Oh, well, it got somehow changed.
Okay, well,
Along with the change in the DES.
how about we, if John and Vaughn could take a look at this, I'll also look back.
Yeah, so the intent of this, I was looking at to get the word stormwater management out
Right.
so that there wasn't confusion between the stormwater regs and these regs.
Yeah,
It still requires a professional engineer to draw a plan and to infiltrate everything above 20%. I'm up for suggestions. There is no right or wrong answer on the next paragraph about produces a minimum of blank % reduction in lot coverage. You go to 5, go to 10. For some of these, the percentage is tricky because on a very small lot, obviously a very small change is a 1% change.
Well, the way I understand this was, if it was under 20%, then we allowed the homeowner to design a rain garden stormwater area.
Correct.
If it was over 20%, it needed an engineer's stamp and design for over the 20%.
Correct. But if you come in at 30% and you come in and your exit project is 30%, you don't need the plan. That's what that paragraph says.
No, but you still need an engineer's plan.
No.
no.
Any
no.
project proposing a decrease or no change in impervious shall not be required to provide a professionally engineered plan, provided the decrease in coverage produces a minimum of 1% reduction. So if you go from 32 to 31, you don't have to do an engineered plan for that over 20. Now,
Because you're improving it.
because you're improving it. Now, what I did in paragraph C, I said this provision shall apply to all projects where pre-existing conditions and post-project conditions exceed 20%. It's effectively removing that next paragraph,
So why did you do that?
because I don't think a 1% if the intent is to capture everything over 20%, I don't think you should get credit for going from 31 to 30.
Well, except if you have a lot that's already developed and you're improving it, let's say 1% improvement, that's good.
Is it achieving what we want?
Well, that's really severe to suddenly go to 20% and then changing everything.
Okay.
And having
This
to
was-
have
this was- this
an
was
engineer
Matt's-
come and do it.
This was Matt's rendition of how to solve the
Right.
stormwater plan.
Which is very confusing, because the way paragraph, if you take out all of the red, strike through and underline, all square footage exceeding 20% needs a plan, and you need to replant everything within the grids, unless you have a 1% reduction.
Right.
So if that's where you want to stay, that's fine.
Or more, 1% or more, a minimum of 1%.
Correct.
Yeah.
And Kathy said maybe the minimum 1% should be increased.
I think we were doing it so that if you were making it better, you didn't have to go back and plant your beach and do
Yeah,
all these.
but it's like you could have a line for 40 feet, and you could be 6 inches over or 6 inches the other way, and that would push you over the threshold or under the threshold. I mean, it's such a fine line.
Okay, well, how about we put this back on the agenda, the shorefront, and John
Yeah.
and Vaughn, if you could get your thinking caps on, see if you can remember back 10
Yes,
years
let's dig
ago.
into the 50-foot, 25-foot change and see when that happened.
Yeah.
Oh, Okay,
And then the last change over on the third page, I understand where the idea came from of photographic documentation, but I figured why not give the person the option to have an inspection. It's very easy to have the building inspector look at it. In fact, some of the stormwater, the shorefront permits I've written have required that the inspector be able to see the infiltration layers as they're going into the infiltration system, as opposed to just getting a photograph. You don't know if they're giving you the same photo, representing it in two different places. Or you could have an engineer do the inspection, or you could do the photographic documentation.
Yeah, it seems like if the building inspector could do it up to 20%, and then licensed engineer after that. For on-site, which would take us back to,
Yeah, aren't we cutting it fine again?
I don't understand the 20% with the inspector.
Oh, she's basically saying if it's a homeowner's design plan that's under 20%, then our building inspector can inspect it. But if it's a engineer's criteria, then the engineer should evaluate it.
yeah, like taking what's in B, that
Well,
project.
if you're in B, you're simply looking to see if there is or is not a rain garden or similar.
Yeah, right, okay.
And if
Then-
someone is building under C, the plan just doesn't show where it's going, it has to show what it's going. So if there's an infiltration bed being designed, it has to be shown on the plan.
Okay, all I was saying was for the ones up to 20%, the building inspector certainly could do that. They can look at the rain garden or whatever has been proposed, and anything after that, we should have a licensed engineer looking at it.
Why?
That,
It's the building inspector's job.
yeah, we used to have, right, on-site inspection by licensed engineers, the second one. And so,
But what we require right now is just photographs.
okay, all I was doing was taking your suggestions and saying for the town building inspector, it goes up to 20%, and on-site inspection by the licensed engineer, which you had put in here for all others. That's all.
If we take out the percentage and requirements, then we have three categories the homeowner can choose, whichever is most flexible to him or her, to substantiate that he's done what he or she said she was going to do. I would prefer the flexibility and not limit it to not try to tie the inspection to the size of the project.
Okay, all right. It
what I
was just a suggestion.
Well,
Stormwater management
I
is a
think what
pretty
we're-
important
Yeah, when we're talking
issue.
about the shorefront, we're talking about bigger homes, much more elaborate. I mean, doesn't seem that money's too much of a deterrent, and people can do their projects so they can pay for the engineer if it gets above 20%.
Okay, anyway, if Vaughn and John could take a look at this, and if you could put it on another agenda, Tavis, that would be great. Okay, all right, moving on, public comment.
Zoning. I have a question on the second page, and it says,
Of which one, Linda?
this is inclusionary,
Inclusion.
and I'm on to the second page, and it says, development in accordance with this provision of this article is permitted as a conditional use permit in all zoning districts. And are you including in that zoning district the municipal watershed district? That's the district around our water source, and I don't think you want to do that. I think you want to take a look at what districts you do or do not want that in. I also have a concern that we're putting this in every district, let's say we have somebody who wants to go out in the 10-acre areas, and they decide to put in an elderly housing unit that is going to have effect on our ambulances, our fire, our police. We at one point had a request at the end of Pleasant Valley Road to put in a neurological home, and that was the concern, the ability to get the equipment down on those more rural roads. So you may want to take a look at whether you really want some of these developments out in the 10-acre and 3-acre areas.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Ditto. Okay, all right. Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, all right, very good. Okay, any other business?
I have a comment that there was the article in the Granite State about the master plan progress, and at the end of the article, there was a suggestion that that information should be up on the webpage of the town. And presently, Tavis has informed me that it is.
Yep.
And so therefore, that information is available to, for everyone to see. And if people have questions, you could always ask me.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, minutes.
Page 3. I'm sorry, page 2. Top, second paragraph, board generally consented to blah, blah. Add at the end, and appointed M. Hodder to fill S. Replier's vacated seat.
Okay, anything else?
Move to
It
approve.
would, hang on just a second, I was just checking. Nobody else? Oh, okay, Tavis, under the CIP appointments, that I informed the board of one letter of interest for could you put for CIP? Just, I mean, I know you say it in the next paragraph, but if you could just put that in. Letter of interest for CIP submitted to the board, okay? Okay, Mike, go ahead.
That's it. Move
Yep.
to approve.
Somebody want to second it?
Seconded.
Okay, motion has been made and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I
Okay.
abstain.
Abstain?
Okay, and one abstention.
Two abstentions.
Two.
I wasn't here. Two abstentions. We weren't here.
Okay, all right, very good.
Move to adjourn.
Okay, motion has been made to adjourn.
Seconded.
Second, all in favor? Aye. Okay, thank you, folks.
Thank you, Kathy.